Hello and welcome back to the We Are Careers show, and hope you're having a great week wherever you are and whatever you're doing in the career sphere. Lucky you get to spend the next 30 minutes with myself, Chris Webb, and my fantastic co-host, Meet Sabiha, as well as our very special guest who we'll introduce shortly. So Sabiha, first of all, how are things going? You having a good week so far?
It has been a very hectic week, and I'm kind of going to be making a little bit of a nod to hecticness in my careers cheers later on in the show. And this is really a reminder of what the show is all about. Now, if you are joining us for the first time, we want to say welcome. Thank you for joining us. And if you enjoy this episode or any of the other episodes that you listen, please do hit that like and subscribe button. Now, the We Are Careers show is your fortnightly go-to for career professionals working within the UK job market and beyond. And it's about those professionals who want to improve and enhance their continuous professional development by finding out about the latest issues that are impacting the career development sector. Now, each show, we're going to bring you the latest updates in the sector to keep you well informed. Plus, we're going to give you an inspirational guest. And oh boy, have we got one in store for you today based on topics that matter to you. The aim is simple, it's to connect and build a strong community of career professionals so that we can serve our clients in the best possible way. Now, if you've not come across me, I'm known as Meet Sabiha, and I help international job seekers stop struggling and start thriving so they can build amazing careers for themselves. And as always, you've heard from my co-guest already, the fabulous Chris Webb. Chris, what have we got coming up for this episode today?
Yes, thanks, Sabiha. So this is one I think we've had a fair amount of kind of interest from previously when we've run sort of episodes of the show and conversations we've had with careers professionals. And that's all about sort of growing an independent business, really, as a private practitioner within the career development sector. And we're very, very grateful to be joined today by Charlotte Housden, who's talked about this topic, has obviously personal lived experience of this topic, and we're going to be diving in depth into the idea of growing a coaching business. That is going to be our big focus for today. So, Charlotte, first of all, a very warm welcome to the show. How are you doing? You having a good week yourself?
Yeah, I'm having a lovely week. I don't, depending on where your listeners or the people who are watching the YouTube video are, we've had a great week here in the UK. It's been lovely and sunny. I'm really enjoying the kind of start of summer. Few days of sunshine and having a great week. So yes, and really delighted to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
Excellent. Good. Well done adding that on the end. Yeah. But yeah, really great to have you here. And we're going to obviously dig into a little bit more about kind of your background, the work that you do, and I suppose your expertise on this particular topic as we kind of go further into the podcast today. But of course, we do start every episode with our careers cheers. So Sabiha, over to you. What are we cheering today? And tell, I guess, the viewers and listeners a little bit more about our careers cheers segment.
So the Careers Cheers came about because we wanted to really make this show a celebration, not just celebration by us, the hosts, but also, as well as the guests, the amazing guests that we have, but also you, yes, you, the amazing audiences that sort of inform us. And so this is really an opportunity for us to celebrate innovative and inspirational members of the careers community, or simply give a shout out to something positive that's happening in the careers world since our last show. So Charlotte, I'm going to come to you first. What is or who is your careers cheers for the week?
So I want to take us back to politics. I know your last show had a political element. I actually want to take us very briefly back to politics. I am super excited that we have 335 new MPs joining Parliament. It's a bit like kind of back to school vibe, isn't it? Because so many people have joined Parliament, and I've got some numbers here which I think are great. So it's the largest number in modern history of new MPs, of which 40% are women, and that's up from 35% in the last Parliament. And 90 of the MPs are actually from minority ethnic backgrounds, and that's up 36%. So I just think this is a fantastic opportunity. I just wanted to shout out about that.
I love that, especially giving that nod to diversity and knowing that the Parliament is now sort of being represented by the communities that these MPs are serving. So that's a great shout out, Charlotte. Chris, what about you? Who or what are you giving a shout out to today?
Well, I was very tempted to kind of lean into the politics side as well. And there was some great stuff, like in addition to what Charlotte's mentioned, I think 96% of the cabinet this time around are state school educated, which I think is the first time it's been above the 93% that represents the number of people that normally go to state school. So that's fantastic. But actually, I'm not going to bandwagon that. I'm going to move slightly different and give a bit of a careers cheers to a careers fest that's coming up on the 18th of October. So this has been organised by Caroline Green at the Talent Cycle, second year that this festival's been run. And the reason I want to give a bit of a careers cheers is a bit of a prompt, really, for people listening to this, because I think you'll still have time to nominate people for one of, I think, the 6 awards that are being given out as part of Careers Fest. And I was very lucky last year to get nominated for 2 awards. That was brilliant. And it's just nice to get that recognition from fellow professionals. So if you know people out there that you think they deserve a little bit of recognition, they deserve celebrating, do check out the Careers Fest 2024. Check out Caroline Green, the Talent Cycle, on LinkedIn. We'll add those details into the episode notes. And if you've got somebody in mind, or even you want to do some self-noms, then do check that out. And definitely let's celebrate and recognise the people in our profession.
Do you know what I'm loving, Chris, about your careers cheers? You put a careers cheers in a careers cheers, and it's almost like, here we go. Here's a festival coming up. We're going to celebrate. And who do you want to celebrate? So loving it. So I hope Chris has got you thinking about who you could nominate, or maybe you're thinking about yourself. Maybe you're thinking, you know what? I've done pretty awesome this year. And so my careers cheer isn't to one particular individual. It's actually to a whole group of career professionals. Before we came on live to the show, we were just having a discussion. I was saying, oh my God, I'm on tour at the moment. I'm so exhausted. And I know, and I've been seeing a lot of sort of graduation ceremonies, because we've been, going up and down the country. That's the UK for anybody who's watching internationally. And we've been seeing a lot of graduation ceremonies. And I know, I can just imagine right now, not only is it high school careers professionals, it's HE, FE professionals. It's been a long, hard year. And for some of you, you're probably relieved that the academic year has come to an end. So I just want to give a big careers cheers out to everyone who's working in high schools, colleges, universities, who have ensured that their students got access to quality career guidance and are now taking a well-earned break. And if that is you right now, comment in whatever platform that you're watching, and let us know what you're going to be doing during this summer break that you're going to get before it all has to start again very, very soon. So that is the end of the careers cheers part of the segment of the show. So Chris, let's dive in. What are we? I know you kind of gave a little bit of a nod of what we're going to be exploring in today's topic, but what's the theme of today's show, Chris?
Yeah, so as we kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, focus sort of today is around growing a coaching business. And we're going to kind of come back to Charlotte in a second to really sort of explore this topic in a bit more depth. I think the reason, one of the reasons that we really wanted to kind of talk about this is quite a lot of careers professionals, I think, often bemoan the fact that private practitioners or individuals that have their own kind of career development businesses or practices, it's not something that's always that widely talked about. As you say, Sabiha, we tend to talk more about kind of practitioners who are operating in particular settings, schools, colleges, universities, adult guidance. But actually, we don't necessarily always kind of talk about how many private practitioners there are, or kind of the challenges, or the things that really kind of need to go into growing and developing those individual businesses. So this is really what we're kind of hoping to focus on today. And we're very lucky to have Charlotte with us, because Charlotte, I know recently you've delivered training on this topic for the EMCC, which I'll let you remind me of that acronym in a minute, because I've already forgotten, and I shouldn't, because I'm a qualified coach. And I guess what would be really interesting to start with is just tell us a little bit more, I suppose, about those kind of training sessions and your background, your coaching journey, or your coaching business journey, for anyone that's maybe not come across you before.
So let me start with EMCC, just because there might be some people going, what is EMCC? So it's the European Mentoring and Coaching Council. It's a bit of a mouthful, but yes, it's one of the professional coaching bodies. So my background, I am a chartered coaching psychologist. My background before that was a chartered occupational psychologist. So my career has been kind of 2 things. It's been consultancy, working in large management consultancies for a period of time, but also a number of small niche consultancies, one of which was a psychology consultancy. And then another part of my career, because there's kind of two parts to it, has been working within HR, human resources, within a number of large organizations, including banks and the NHS and some others. And that was kind of where I was at until about, I would say, 6 years ago. When I started, I'd already been doing quite a lot of coaching, but it was almost ad hoc. I hadn't had a huge amount of specific training, but I had a couple of degrees in psychology. I was chartered as an occupational psychologist, as I mentioned. So I was bringing some of that knowledge to bear, but hadn't had formal training. And I started probably training in 2017 to become a coach. And now I run a practice which is 50% consultancy and 50% coaching. And one of the reasons that the EMCC asked me to run these sessions about growing your business is because of the types of clients I work with. So I have 3 types of coaching clients. I have executive coaching clients. So these are senior people within organizations who are often looking at moving into a new role. They've maybe gone into a new role. They're looking at how they can land effectively. So we're working often on performance coaching. We're looking at kind of how they can raise the quality of their performance at work. I have a second group who are often private clients, and they tend to be at crossroads in their career, 30s, 40s, or 50s perhaps in age, looking at maybe they might want to shift. They've had quite a long career in one area, they might want to shift. And so I'm helping them with that pivot process. But my third group, which is completely unexpected, and I didn't seek them out, they found me, is people who are running coaching businesses. Some of them are career development professionals, some of them are coaches, some of them are coaching psychologists. And they have come to me because I wrote a book. So back in 2019, 2020, I decided that I wanted to understand how people navigated changes in their life and their career. And I interviewed 108 people in 27 countries, which was super fun. And then I evaluated the data using a thematic analysis, not so much fun. I did it all by hand. Basically, that's just a fancy name for looking at the themes. And then I turned it into a blog for 18 months every week. And then I turned that into a book. So what people are seeing is they're reading the book. They are looking at how I'm promoting myself using the book and how I use that as a calling card to attract clients to me. And they're kind of saying, oh, could I chat to you about that? And then it turns into coaching. So given that I do quite a lot of that work, it's a growing part of my business. EMCC said to me, would you consider doing a kind of like 2-handed set of workshops on growing your business? And I'll stop there because I'm sure you've got some further questions for me.
Wow, I mean, yeah, great intro there, Charlotte. And I think, you know, a number of our viewers and listeners probably will be familiar with you, I guess, off the back of training that you've offered, certainly to career development professionals, and many will be familiar with your book, Swim, Jump, Fly. I guess kind of before we sort of talk a little bit more about some of the things, I guess, that practitioners need to consider when sort of setting up that business, just be interesting, I guess, to know from your perspective, when did you make that decision to be a business, I guess? When did that kind of happen within your trajectory of the work that you were doing with occupational psychology and coaching? Was there kind of a tipping point, or was it something that you've kind of always been self-employed? Because I think that's a question we often get, is for people that are interested in self-employment within the career sector, like, when do I make that leap, or what do I need to have to be able to kind of do that, if that makes sense?
Yeah. And I would say I'm atypical, because I actually left employment back in 2008 to set up my own business to do, I would call it consultancy, but to be fair, I was probably just really a contractor. So I was going from project to project to project, sort of calling myself a consultant, but just doing kind of project work. And then for various reasons, I fell out of that. I was running my own business for about 8 years. And then I fell out of that and back into employment. And what I found useful was that being both sides of the coin, but both in terms of being someone who'd worked inside organizations, in HR primarily, but also someone who'd worked outside organizations as a consultant going into those organizations. I felt I had that kind of really good inside-outside way of looking at challenges for clients. I understood the politics and how to get things done, having worked in them, but I also understood some of that distance that you have as a consultant. And actually, there's a really fantastic book called Orbiting the Hairball, the Giant Hairball, which is all about that, where you can stand back from the kind of minutiae of everything that's going on and have that little bit of distance, but not so far away that you don't understand some of the politics and things going on. So I've had that kind of inside outside, both in terms of the type of work I've done, but also in terms of running my own business. And I kind of fell back into work again. And I thought, after a number of years of being back in work, I thought, I think I quite liked running my own business. I think at heart, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm quite good at the sales bit. And I quite like the coming up with models. And you'll know this from being on some of my workshops, coming up with new models and ways of thinking and new products and coaching products. I'm quite productive in the number of things that I have that I can sell. So I'm probably atypical, to come back to your question, because primarily I've done quite a bit of sales within consultancy, because as a consultant, you're kind of selling all the time.
Correct.
And because I think I've got a really good network, and so work tends to come to me. So I think I'm not your average person in that respect. But it doesn't mean that there are people out there who are going to be listening to this or watching this who might have some appetite to do their own thing. And they might just need a bit of support, a bit of help to get through that. There's some logistical things in terms of setting up your own business, whether you want to be a sole practitioner, whether you want to be limited. There's some stuff that you need to do, like setting up a website, even if it's very simple. And there's all sorts of links. I know that we've got at the end of this, we've got some slides that I've done that people can have a look at. And at the end of that, I've got some links in there to things that they can find out. And there's a really lovely marketing organization that does marketing for coaches. And they offer lots of free stuff about how to set up a website, some of that boring kind of logistical bit. But I think there's also a big piece about mindset, which is, having the confidence to do it. I don't know, but Chris, Sabiha, what do you think? What's your thoughts on that in terms of my mindset almost is bigger than the kind of
Well,
skills?
I definitely resonate with that, because this is part of the core of, I resonated with so much that you say. So I'm an entrepreneur too, like yourself, self-employed, have been for many, many years. Didn't intend to go down this route, but it became something. I realized it was something that I was good at. So many elements of what you've spoken about in terms of networking, the fact that you wrote the book to then leverage your other areas of your expertise, and how you have this duality of where you're coaching individuals, but you're also working within organizations externally, as well as you've done it internally as well, to be able to accumulate all of that experience to help you become sort of almost like the best version of yourself, of who you are right now, and how you're delivering that, and how then all these opportunities don't just come by accident. I don't believe that. I believe that you do the things that you do, and as a result, by amplifying them, by putting them out there for people to consume in whatever way that people consume that information, and that sort of kind of content that you've created, it allows people to then be able to do what they want to do. So I'm really finding it really interesting hearing about your journey of what took you to entrepreneur, and why you eventually decided entrepreneurship is for you. And so, coming to a question that I have, which is that, as you said, there might be people that's sitting here right now who are listening to this and thinking to themselves, God, I've been thinking about setting up on my own for absolutely ages. Maybe even friends and family have been saying to them, go on, do it. Why aren't you doing it? Because they see something in them that perhaps the individual professional isn't yet seeing in themselves. So maybe they're oscillating or perhaps sitting on the fence. So what do you say to coaches with regards to the practical aspect of when they're thinking about developing their own business, Charlotte?
Yeah, good question. I'm going to come to that, but I want to say one tiny thing before that, which is it can feel quite fearful setting up, or fear-inducing setting up on your own. You're thinking, well, what do I have that's any different from anyone else? And one of the things I talked about in these 2 workshops that I ran for the EMCC was I talked about the essence of yourself, the essence of your coaching practice, and that none of us are the same. We all have different backgrounds. And one of the things I took them through was what I've just been speaking about with you, which is my career trajectory, and then showed them a series of things that I do, that I sell to clients. And then you can map that back to my career and say, oh, of course you'd be doing that. Of course you'd be doing B2B workshops. Of course you'd be doing kind of some coaching, helping coaches, because of my background. And we all have that. And regardless of who we are and where we've come from, we will have some things in our background and our skill set and our personality that are completely unique. And actually, the market can feel crowded if we're trying to be the same as everyone else. But actually, if we take what we do very specifically, and I'll give you an example. So one of my products is this, which is, Chris knows this. It's a product called Liminal Muse, and it's based on my imagery. So I'll just give you an example. So these are my photographs, and there are a lot of abstract images in there. And I turned it into a product because I have a background in photography. But the people listening or people watching will also have specific things that they love to do that someone else doesn't do. And if you can turn that into a product, or if you can turn that into a service, then it will feel less scary, because you kind of look at it and say, oh, actually, do you know what? I am different from this person here and this person here, because we're all unique and we all have those things in our background. So that's the thing I would say, if people are nervous, to be less nervous, because there'll be some things that they can turn into products or services. From a logistical perspective, there will be these things that they need to do. And one of the things I talked about in the workshop, and I don't know whether, Chris, it's the right time to show the slides. So this is, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see these. If you're listening to this via podcast, these will be available to you, and I'll do my very best to try and describe them. But if I'm a bit rubbish at describing what I'm showing on the slides, just go to the show notes and you'll be able to see the slides. So one of the things I asked people as a kind of basic question is, where do you get your energy from? And the image that I've got in front of me, and I'll describe this for the podcast listeners, it's basically the two sides of a graph. It's, if you think about a square and you take the left-hand side of the square and the bottom side of the square, on the left-hand side, you've got working with others at the top left, and you've got working alone, bottom left. And so you're going to place yourself on this graph and say, do I tend to like working with others, or do I tend to like working alone? And this can shift over time, and I'll give it a little example in a minute of how mine has shifted over time. And on the line that's at the bottom of the square, you've got depth on the bottom left-hand side, and you've got breadth on the bottom right-hand side. And so if you're starting to picture this diagram, it's about, where are you going to put yourself on that? Do you want to work with others? Do you want to work on your own? Do you want to work at depth, or do you want to work at breadth? So here's my example that I shared in the workshop. I started off working alone on the book and on the research. I'm quite deadline driven, and I knew that if I just wrote the book all on my own, I'd never get it done. And I needed an external driver, like accountability buddies, to help me to get the writing done. So I created a book club of people who really loved my blog, my podcast, and said, would you join, and would you give feedback on? And sometimes it was delightful, and sometimes it was very tough to hear some of the feedback, which I was like, why am I doing this? They're saying awful things about my ideas. But it was, to be frank, they made the book 110% better than it would have been. So I started off working alone at depth, and then I started working with others on depth, and that was the book. As my practice has shifted over the last 6 or so years, I am a bit of a butterfly, and I'm just accumulating more products and ways of working. And I've got the Liminal Muse cards, and I've got the book, and I've got the group coaching program I'm calling Navigating Change. And I'm shortly going to be moving into helping coaches to navigate their businesses. So, you can see I keep building new products and services. And I started doing those on my own, and I thought it's a bit of a lonely old place to be sometimes. So actually, I'm moving into some more collaborations. I collaborated with 2 people on the Navigating Change program. I'm also creating another small business, which is using ACT, so acceptance and commitment therapy, or acceptance and commitment coaching, which I'm training in. And they are much more experienced than I am, but I've got quite a good background in sales and big businesses and stuff. So I've got the contacts and they've got the content. So between the 3 of us, they bring different skills. One's a clinical psychologist and a therapist, and a coaching psychologist. One is a research psychologist, so she's going to be great at evaluation of programs. And she's also a coaching psychologist. And then I've got the kind of occupational psychology bit. So I would say that if you think you've got gaps in your skill set, or if there are certain things you really worry about doing, Find somebody else that's great at those things, because why spend your life doing the things that you're not very good at, and the quality of your work will be average, where you could collaborate with somebody who's brilliant at that thing, and you just think, oh, thank goodness, I'm collaborating with someone on a piece of work I've just won in the last couple of days. And she's doing the very detailed research bit and the analysis, and then I'm going to do the write-up. So it's a really nice marriage of the two sets of skills. And it also helps with longevity, in terms of this is a marathon, this is a long-term game. It will enable you to stay energized and excited if you have other people with you, if you're the kind of person that wants to work with others. But it might be that you don't get your energy from there. So actually, it would be the worst thing you could do to work with others.
And I think it's such an important point about, seeking that kind of expertise from other industries or kind of other parts of your own sector. I think we're quite a small profession, obviously the career development profession. And I think there's a, maybe not a tendency, but there's a risk sometimes of becoming more insular or becoming quite isolated. And I think that's so important, as you say, kind of broadening actually, what else is out there, who else is working in maybe adjacent domains, and where can I kind of draw from in terms of their expertise or ideas or collaborations, which I think is, such an important thing, as you say, for business.
Yeah, great. So the next idea that I've been sharing and Chris is going to be my yes, thank you very much, Chris. He's now moved us on to the next slide, which I can describe more easily because it's not a diagram, it's a set of bullet points. So this is something about, it kind of leads on from that longevity question, which is how can you find the things that bring you joy and energy, but also we all need to make money. So the questions I ask myself is, when I'm thinking about taking on new work, I use something called the RISE principle, and I call it RISE because it's the first letter of 4 bullet points. The bullet points are raising profile. So you're asking yourself the question, does this piece of work raise my profile? And I'll come back to actually the EMCC workshop in a minute, because then I'll take you through how I've decided to do them. So is it raising my profile? Is it income generating? Is it stretching me? Am I learning something? Or is it stretching me in terms of creating new content? And is it enjoyable? And it doesn't have to be all of those 4. It can be 3 of those. So if I take EMCC, they didn't pay me. So I was raising my profile and getting to know lots of people. Yes, I wasn't making money out of it. It wasn't income generating, but the people on the workshop were coaches who were possible, targets for coaching. Some of them would contact me and say, hey, can I have some coaching with you? So I'm sort of modeling the process that I would be doing with them on a one-to-one, but at group level. So they see it, they like it, and they come to me for coaching. Also, some of them went and bought the book, some of them bought the cards. So there is as a secondary income, even though I'm not being paid to do the actual workshop. Is it stretching? Absolutely, because whilst I'd done all of this as one-to-one work, I'd never taken it all and consolidated it into 2 workshops. And I enjoyed the process, and it's been really helpful. And obviously I'm taking some of that from EMCC and using it with this podcast, the WeAreCareers podcast. So there is something about asking ourselves, are we kind of hitting all of those points on the RISE principle when we are thinking about taking work?
It's absolutely fantastic insight, Charlotte. I mean, I think we had an extra slide to show, but as always, we're criminally running out of time on the podcast, which happens every single time because we just have so much great stuff to talk about. I mean, I think those illustrative ideas, I think, are great for anyone that's kind of watching on YouTube. But as Charlotte's mentioned, if you're listening on Spotify, you're thinking the descriptions were great, I want to see a bit more. Do not worry, because those slides, that information is going to be in the episode notes on Spotify, so you'll be able to catch them either way. Now, we are kind of rapidly drawing towards the end of the podcast. So I guess, Charlotte, before we sort of tie things up, lots of great content, lots of great information for any practitioners today who may be thinking of starting or kind of developing or growing their business. I guess if you had sort of 1 or 2 or 3 places to signpost them to, if anyone wants to kind of take this further, after listening or watching today, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah. So I've got a few places, and these are actually in the show notes as well. So connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to find out more about growing a business. I'd be very happy to chat. There's a Coaching at Work magazine coming out in September, and I'm going to be putting that onto my website. So if you want to read that, that's all about growing your business. So have a look on my website. That links on the notes. I'm also running a CDI session in September. So come along to that. And then there's this great, well, there's my book, obviously, quick flash of that, Swim, Jump, Fly. But there's also this very interesting book called The Idea in You. So that is a great book if you're thinking about building some products or services.
I love that. Love both also the nod to the books. I know so many of our followers love a good book recommendation, Charlotte. So I know definitely there will be folks going, quick, make a note of that title. What was it that she said? So hit the replay, folks, in case you missed it. And just honestly, as an entrepreneur, I think there's something about entrepreneurship. I know it's not for everybody, and I get, and even as an entrepreneur, I need to have not everybody in the business wanting to be entrepreneurs, because then when you're trying to build your own team, as I've been doing so over a number of years, it's hard then because you need intrapreneurs as well. But and you talk about the various different elements of how you can find your flow within a business and what that can look like. And I love your ideas around innovation and how you should constantly, I love that because I'm constantly developing. Every few months there's a new product, there's a new service that I'm developing based on the needs of the community that I am serving. And so I just love that. And I think even if you are somebody that's, as a professional, listening to this because you stumbled upon it by by accident, or maybe you came and you really found this fascinating, this topic, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm not an entrepreneur, I never intend on being an entrepreneur because I want to work for an organization. There's ways of being an entrepreneur within organizations as well, and taking what Charlotte has shared with us today in today's podcast and translating that into the work that you are doing within an organization as well. And that's what I love about what you've spoken about today. What you've talked about, the concepts and the ideas are just not limited to working as an entrepreneur. And so, as Chris said, we are out of time. So Charlotte, I think I'm going to have to say thank you so much for joining Chris and I for today's podcast. You have been a fantastic guest. And so, Chris, final thoughts, and who and what have we got coming up in the next show?
I think we've got a great episode lined up for the future there on kind of entrepreneurship and taking this conversation further. So I think this has given us some great ideas for future episodes. So yes, when you're watching this, it's going to be kind of the end of July, and that means our next episode is going to be coming up after this one, the week of results day. So I'm going to say no more than that for now, but other than there might be a little bit of a connection there in terms of what the episode involves. So we will look forward to seeing you then. That's going to be kind of the middle of August. But until then, we hope you have a great start to August, great start to the summer holidays, if that's kind of affecting you, particularly in the UK. And we will see you all in the career sphere very soon. Take care.
Goodbye.